I'd like to thank the entire panel for sticking to the time limits. Thank you so much again. I thought I'd just kick off the time by abusing my prerogative and asking Mr. Rijiju the first question. At the DGP's conference, this quite exceptional get-together, can you give us some idea of what your own vision for policing, as you see it evolving, is? And what particular models you saw that would most closely approximate what you'd like to see happening elsewhere in the country?
What I outlined briefly in my remark is, police is responsive. Police has to be responsive. But police will be responding to according to the behavioral pattern of the society. So there has to be a close-knit coordination and understanding between the local police and the local population. So that, because police is civilian in nature, it's not that paramilitary force or army. Police is very civilian. And when we talk about the police reform, within the police also we need to have reforms, which I can explain if required later on. But the police and the public coordination, that must be brought much more closer than what it is. For example, some of the northeastern people had complained that when they go to police station in Delhi for some issues, the police do not register the case. They don't talk properly. And that is the, reports of most of the citizens that we are small people. When we go to the thanas, they just kick us out. The thanedar says, "Tum jao, kya karna aaya hai, bhaga do." So they say the police is not responsive, not soft in dealing with the people. So I want at the ground level, police reform at the ground level, they must be very, very adapted to the local situation. So for that, it is not police who is to do all alone, in integration with the local people. So that we have to make lots of efforts there. And then, for example, for illegal, people, in particular location, they will try to dominate over the police by various means, by using political power, by resources, or by arms. They will do it. Then in many cases, the police are brought under that kind of fear, psychosis atmosphere. So police do not act. Police say, "Kya karega? Hum kya kar sakte hain? Yahan to aise hi chalta hai." We know it happens. Yahan SP tax deta hai. There are some cases, SP sab se bhi tax leta hai log. If that is the condition, it's very sad. So, in that circumstances, there has to be area domination. That is why I said, when citizens are not behaving according to the rule of law, in that circumstances, the police must be tough. But that toughness of the police action must be exceptional. It must be an exception, not a common practice.
I want to put, after the Gujarat conference, in your view, which states have actually been most responsive to the discussions there? Can you give us some examples of who has been doing, who has been
yes.
most progressive?
We, in the review, I realized that visiting of the police officers from one state to another state, this is one of the recommendations we gave. Some states have progressed very well. In Madhya Pradesh, also I liked some of the reports which we received from there. Delhi police has done quite a lot, especially in the infusing of technology and so many things actually. They've done well. Some of the states, I don't want to name it, have not come up to the expectation, but we have decided to call one more meeting before we sit for next year's DG conference, which we are likely to select a new location somewhere in central India. Before that, we would like to see the progress of some of the states where we realize that they are a little laid back. So I cannot give number one like that. There's nothing called number one of one state in terms of progress, but there are some positive progress, very perceptible progress in cases of some of the states.
Maya's paper, you must read, because it's a very good paper. Maya Darwala's paper, which must be in your folder or whatever it is, that shows. And when I read it, I thought that this is the way out. because she writes that Sikkim is the state which has scrupulously followed all the dicta of the Supreme Court in the directions which Prakash Singh got from them. And therefore I thought that perhaps that's one way, make all the states of the union smaller because and more beautiful, because Sikkim is one of the very beautiful states.
Maya Daruwala, do you agree with this talk we've been hearing about, smart policing, more technology and so on and so forth, or is this going to be useless without more community empowerment and more police accountability?
I think it's always good to have a slogan. It's always good to have leadership. It's always good to have attention from the highest level for policing. The A in SMART, I believe, is accountability, and that's the one I look for. If technology, technology itself is not neutral. You can use technology for very bad and wicked things. I think that our conversation, sir, up to now has been very urban-centric, because we are talking in an urban setting. We all understand the urban much better. But I think when we talk about police and the public being friendly, when I look at what happens in the rural areas, nothing even comes to our notice. Nobody can even reach a magistrate. The daroga is king. And the power asymmetry is so deep that I would hope that at the next meeting that you would review that part also. And also have a vision statement about what kind of a policing you want. You remember that in 2008 we had this model police bill that was brought about under the leadership, under the chairpersonship of Soli Sorabji. That has been again reviewed in 2015. The BPR&D was asked by the Ministry of Home Affairs. It sat under the chairmanship of Mr. Kamal Kumar, also a police officer. And the first few paragraphs give a very fine description of what the police should be looking at, what the functions of the police are, and what the baseline principles of policing should be. And I would urge you to just take a look at the first few paragraphs and perhaps make that something, a litmus test for the policing in the future.
Now, Mr. Prakash Singh, I wanted to say it's almost in this country as if our discussions about policing, sometimes we are not talking about not one country, but many countries. And on the one hand, we are talking about police accountability, better FIRs, making the police more responsive to the community. And on the other, as your own recent investigation of the violence in Haryana shows, you are talking about mass civil disturbance on an epic scale. In Kashmir, we are talking about street violence of a scale that this country has not witnessed in decades. You have had breakdowns of law and order in Karnataka, possible repercussions in Tamil Nadu. Sometimes it almost seems like we are perched on the edge of anarchy. You often hear calls calling for a more coercive police, a police that is more repressive. Does policing have solutions for these crises? Does police reform have solutions for these crises? What are they?
You see, the kind of problems that arise in this country from time to time, the kind of internal security scenario that we are facing, whether in the northeast, whether in J&K, whether the Maoist problem in central India. You see, a number of problems, a number of agitations, a number of, insurgencies have certain basic issues. If those basic issues probably need to be addressed, and if you address the basic issues, police would not have to pay, I'll put it this way, police has to pay for the sins of somebody else, maybe the politician, maybe the administration. If the administration has not delivered, if the politician has gone back on his promise, then the people rise in protest, and police has to pay for the sins of others. Now that's very unfair, and police can control situations only up to a point. You see, take the case of the Maoist insurgency that we are having. They were, see, I have followed this movement from its inception in 1967, and let me tell you, there were two occasions when we thought we had solved the Naxalite problem. One was after the arrest and death of Charu Mazumdar, when there was complete fragmentation within the organization, and we thought the problem is finished, is over. But it resurrected because the basic issues had not been addressed. The other time was when Kondapalli Sitaramaiah was leading the movement. After he was arrested again, there was a complete ebb in the movement, and we thought the problem is solved. But it was not solved. You see, it keeps on resurrecting because the basic issues need to be addressed. And that is very essential. You see, I mean, police can deal with these problems up to a point, but then once they have tackled it, the administration must step in, the grievances must be addressed if they are genuine.
There's a wonderful observation Mr. Sunil Kumar from the audience has sent in, and please, if there are any more, can someone please help get them up here? I'd be very grateful. And what Mr. Kumar says basically is that, look, the deterioration of policing isn't unique. All our public institutions have been in various stages of degeneration. And the reason this isn't getting addressed is basically because large elite sections of society, the middle class, have stopped depending on government institutions for anything. So if there's no municipal water, we get our own. If there's no public security, we get private security. And there's basically a breakdown of sort of faith in the state as a provider of services. I was wondering, Fali Nariman, if you might have some thoughts on this, because this is a big change in the fabric of our society and the way the country works.
Yes, but I was listening to Prakash, and I think what he pointed out, this is really the, sorry. This is really the great problem about how to deal with a whole bunch of things which have nothing to do with policing at all. It is poverty alleviation. People who are on the fringe of society, who can't do anything at all. What do you do with all these problems? We have a cauldron of problems in our country. There's just nothing that you can have anywhere else in the world, and we have it. We have any problem that arises. Therefore, I don't know whether these quick solutions are the only way, or whether we should have a society which at least tries to solve a lot of friction and fractions within us. Languages, religions, particularly religion. There's just now so much fraction, Mr. Home Minister, unnecessarily. I'm not blaming the government. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying you did it, or the Congress did it, or somebody else did it. But, we have to make much more peace in the world. Instead of having all these other people are at the fringes trying to take a big bash at somebody or something at the other, who have no role in governance, who have nothing to do with government. And they are the people who start instigating on either side, on the right or on the left, makes no difference. And that's something which I don't know. It has to be controlled. It has to be controlled. And I hope and pray that it will be. And I have great faith, of course, in the country. I don't care for any government, quite frankly. But I have great faith in the country.
Justice Lahoti, there's a question here from an officer who says, because of his position, he'd rather not be named. The question he says is he feels the police often ends up carrying the can, whereas what you have is a larger breakdown in the criminal justice system, where prosecutors are not doing their job properly, lower court, trial court judges are not doing their job properly. And he says, why is constantly the police only being blamed where there is a larger breakdown of the criminal justice system as a whole? Is that a fair criticism? And if so, what should be done about it?
I won't agree that there is a failure of criminal justice system. The system is working. But then just as the Honorable Minister said a little before, who are the judges? They are the products of this society. They all come from this society. So there is a wholesale degeneration of the society. The judges cannot be an exception. We must admit it. But at the same time, I must say, there is a basic misconception about what is a criminal justice system. The judiciary is held responsible for failure of justice. But what is the role that the judiciary plays in delivering the criminal justice? The judge only listens, records evidence, and delivers the judgment. The rest of the justice delivery system is not within the hands of the judiciary. There has to be an investigation, there has to be a prosecution, and then comes the role of the judge. He delivers the judgment. Judgment according to law, judgment according to the evidence. It's for the investigation to collect the evidence, for the prosecution to present the case in the best manner before the court, for the prosecutor to argue the case to the best of his ability and cite the law, and then get the judgment. So, the criminal justice system is all right, but the role of the judiciary in the dispensation of criminal justice is very minimal. So, possibly, if you feel that there is a breakdown of criminal justice system or the system is not functioning as well as it should, the answer would lie somewhere else than with the judiciary.
Maya Daruwal, I've heard you talk about this before, and I think you might have another opinion.
Sir, far be it from me to disagree with the judge. But now that you're not on the bench, I can venture. So, I feel that the questioner also, that he said that why do the police have to carry the can for the rest of the criminal justice system? I feel that when we speak like that, the police are saying, don't blame us, but actually they're also making an excuse for not doing what they should be doing when they are doing it. You can't be unlawful and then say, why are you only blaming us? You can't be non-performing and then say, why are you blaming us? Then the same thing, the answer from the judiciary cannot be, we are only part of the same society. No. I am part of the same society also. I'm just a civilian. And I'm poking my nose into the criminal justice system. Justice Lohoti or the chief of police could both tell me to shove off. But the issue is, if I do wrong, someone is going to catch me. Judges do not look to see whether there has only been 24 hours custody. Judges do not look at first glance at whether there has been torture in custody. The fair trial is no longer assured at the level of the lower judiciary. There are real failings there. Now the failings may be because there is not enough education, not enough training. It could be because there are too few policemen, there is too few judges. And also, I think, sir, when the minister was talking about technology, I think technology also must be brought to bear to reduce, not only to reduce, but to completely eliminate torture and third-degree methods. We cannot, as a country, agree that torture is happening, but we won't look at it if we are the judiciary, or we won't look at it if we are the politician. I do not think that we can keep on saying we are a society just like that. I am part of society, you are part of society, and we are saying we won't tolerate it.
One aspect of this system of justice that we are talking about, and that occurred to me when the minister mentioned about somebody wielding the lathi, etc., when it came to a complete breakdown. You see, there is a civil law system in the world, and there is a common law system, as we call it. We have adopted the common law system. We talk of rule of law. In China, they don't have rule of law. They have rule by law. Entirely different. Rule by law. We have rule of law. Now, perhaps the ideal is between the two. How do we accommodate it? It's a philosophical question which we can't possibly answer today, but I'm just suggesting to you that some thinkers in universities and so on have to put their heads together. And that is why this individual liberty consonant with law and order is a very, very good concept. That was the quotation which I gave from Sir Madhavan Nayar's judgment as the Privy Council. The individual liberty with due observance of law and order is perhaps the mean by which we can go.
Sanjay Vashishta, who's a researcher in experimental criminology at Oxford, has asked a question about why evidence-based policing. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Sanjay Vashisht, who's a researcher in experimental criminology at Oxford, has asked a question about why evidence-based policing hasn't really grown in our entire region and not just in India. And I'll just throw in, if I may, a couple of anecdotes here. So we've had roughly 3 months of rioting in Kashmir, 4,000 odd police officers injured, vast numbers of civilians injured, vast numbers of deaths, cases registered and prosecutions initiated for rioting, 0, not one. It's a fascinating little statistic, and it shows that something is very wrong in the way we go about dealing with these things. I was wondering if Mr. Prakash Singh, who has talked about these things often, might have some thoughts on this. I mean, Justice Lahoti is right. We're terrible at the cases we bring to judges. The other day in Kashmir, fascinating again, a glimpse from Uri, where the NIA has been sent to investigate, what happened. But several of the buildings and the tents with our mania for military cleanliness have been demolished, so you can't actually do a detailed forensic search because the crime scene's been tampered with, and nobody seems to have told people that, you don't touch anything till the forensics people get there.
Actually, this brings us back to the question of insulating police from extraneous influences. Extraneous to be equated more often than not with political influences. I'll tell you from my Haryana experience, where I was asked to conduct an inquiry into the riots and the disturbances. And I found that even when police knew everything, they were reluctant to register FIRs against known rioters. They were reluctant to register because they were under pressure, local pressure, community pressure, and there was no clear mandate or direction from the government that no, whatever be the consequences, you have to register and proceed ahead. Government was also, left it to at the police station level, and the police station level, when they found that there's no pressure from the top, they just went slow. And even in cases where the rioters were known or sometimes they were listed, they said, no, we want incontrovertible evidence of their presence and involvement in riots. So only in cases where there was some videographic evidence, photographic evidence, then alone they would take some action or say that, well, action is being processed. So you see, if you want investigations to be done objectively, and if you want police to really prosecute the offenders, charge sheet the offenders, it is absolutely essential that they have to be above local influences. They have to be insulated from extraneous pressures, because otherwise the caste pressure, the community pressure, the political pressure, everything works on them, and we find that, and this matter, mind you, is before the High Court of Punjab and Haryana. They are cornering the state government on several issues. They have cornered them on my report. They say, why are you not implementing? You give us an action taken report. They are cornering them on the cases registered, why progress has been tardy. When they are, in several districts that I went, say they have registered 100 cases. Just by way of example, if there are 100 cases registered and there are 100 cases of rioting, then I would say, all right, how many accused do you have to take care of? They will say 50. I said, what? 100 cases of rioting? Even under the law, it has to be minimum 500. Actually it would be, say, more than 1,000 or maybe 2,000-3,000. But they would say only 50 accused are known to us. So, they were going slow, and they had, I would say, tacit support of the local politician and the government. That is the problem.
I'm afraid we're going to soon have to start wrapping up, so I can't take more questions. But I just want to add to this that, every time these discussions start, they always get a little depressing. There's a police officer from Jammu and Kashmir who's just said that, pointing to the minister's statement about hardworking police officers, said that the 10,000 new SPOs, the special police officers they've just had, are going to get paid 5,000 rupees for the first 3 years and then 6,000 after that. And he says this is for men who will be risking their lives on a day-to-day basis. So, how do you expect them not to make a few rupees when they get the opportunity, when they're risking their lives for 5,000 rupees? And isn't this just exploitation? I mean, this is obviously a ridiculous amount of money to be paying somebody. There's across the board, when you talk about things like forensics, again, this is a subject that has been studied ad nauseum. We don't have enough university positions, and the best talent simply gets screamed off by the private sector at salaries vastly higher than the government of India pay scales. So in many, many cases, we have forensic science laboratories with either reports, waiting lists piling up, or else producing nonsensical reports which don't stand the test of judicial scrutiny or independent expert scrutiny. Yeah. It's possible. It'll cost money, which, again, state governments don't have. So I'd like to end, though, with a last question, which I'd actually like to ask someone here. I'd like that, in fact, a pile of them here from women in the audience, and I think that should be the last question because it's something that's a huge issue in Delhi. Rakhi Bakshi, journalist of eminence, has wanted to ask about the safety of, and if I may just add to that a question from Shweta, another woman in the audience who wants to say that, every time there is a case that gets a lot of publicity, media attention, there's suddenly a big sort of amount of attention, the system gets activated, there are results, but for thousands and thousands of other cases of women out there, absolutely nothing at all happens. And I was thinking maybe starting from that end, we could get some answers on this. I think this is something maybe everyone in the panel could address. Mr. Ramachandran, perhaps you would like to kick off on this?
See, I agree with you, Praveen, that certain cases in Delhi get a lot of publicity, but there are perhaps hundreds of other cases deep in the interior of a similar nature happening which do not get attention. You see, need of the hour is to, number one, see, we are very short of manpower. Please remember that. We are very short of manpower by international standards. It should be, as on date, if I am correct, it is 182 per lakh of population. 182 on paper, mind you. In actual fact, it is 139. And by UN standards, it should be 222. So we are very, very short of manpower. And in the Lok Sabha, there was a statement that we are short by 500,000 men in the police. So we are very thin on ground. And rural policing, let me tell you, has grievously suffered during the last few decades. Grievously suffered. Policing is, whatever policing they do, भैया शहर में ठीक होना चाहिए, वीआईपी विजिट ठीक होने चाहिए, जो दिखता है हमारे सामने रोज रोज जिसको अखबार वाले पकड़ लेंगे वो दिखता रहे, और गांव वालों को कोई पूछने वाला नहीं है, उनको जहन्नम में जाने दो. आई एम सॉरी बट दिस इज द माइंडसेट. रूरल पुलिसिंग हैज grievously suffered. चौकीदारी सिस्टम which we had, which was very effective when we started service, वो तो खत्म हो गया. चौकीदारी सिस्टम कागज पे कुछ होगा तो होगा, चौकीदारी सिस्टम में खत्म हो गया. So we have to improve policing across the country and not only in the metro cities. You see, Delhi gets the best attention. It gets the maximum money. It has the best resources. But policing will be judged by what is happening in a remote village of Deoria or Gonda or a remote village in Bhatinda, and it should not be judged by. We have become far too Delhi-centric. That is wrong. It must disappear, and policing has to improve across the board, across the rural hinterland. That must be covered.
Minister, let me ask you this as an activist, as a member of society, as someone I know a lot of young Northeast students approach. when is a young woman in this city going to feel safe walking into a police station and asking for help?
That is why I spoke about the reforms of the mindset. I just give you one example. We don't have much time. I can justify if I have to speak on this matter for 15 minutes, but I'll just give an example. The young IFS officer who was a consulate in there in Shanghai. So I asked him that you are still quite a fairly young officer, and how is the security scenario here? He said, sir, I can just give you one example. He just got married and he came to India, Delhi. Then his mother asked him, बेटा तुम अकेले क्यों आए, बहू को छोड़ के क्यों आए? अब चाइना में, अरे तुम अकेले बहू को चाइना में अकेले छोड़ के आए? You just got married and you left behind your wife in China. Then the officer told his mother, Mummy, your bahu is much safer in China than here with me. Here, if the women are not able to walk alone safely in any of the colonies, this is not the problem of the police or the person, it's the problem of the mindset of the society. So that is why the mindset of the society is such that if some political parties or if I speak out loudly, then it will be amounting to insulting our system, our culture, our way of things, So that is why nobody is really taking it forward. Police, if I try to see, there is a brutal rape case. No words can do any suffice. Nothing can justify, no matter how much steps police is taking. Question is, what can police do, you tell me first of all? If police do not take action against the rapist, if he is not punished by the law, then there is a failure in the system. But you tell me, who could have prevented that? Within a mama, batija, something happens and batiji or something happens in a closed door. How is police supposed to prevent that? You tell me first. It is not to say that police is to run away from the responsibility. See, prevention is the collective responsibility of the society. Taking punitive action or preventive action is the role of the state machinery. So we cannot, segregate that. We all are part of the system. Please understand that if society has to ensure that a woman feels safe in his own land, then police, number one, government has to be there, but it must be brought in the larger scale of discussion, and that is why I talked about the mindset reform from that context. Secondly, about that evidential all issues, what we want, as a minister also I personally want that we should not be dependent on the expertise or experience of one police officer. Why should we depend on the expertise and experience of one police officer? It must be research-based. It must be evidence-based. It must be scientific-based. It must be readily available to deliver justice. Why should we depend on one person to get justice for another person? The system must be robust, that justice must be easily and automatically, naturally available for anybody in this country. As a citizen of the country, it is a fundamental right to get justice. So we have to move in that direction. That is why we are all talking about reforms, but at that scale where it should move towards, not just general talking. That's why I did not list out what we are doing. I could have pronounced what we have done, 100 major steps taken by the government of India in last 2 years, but that is not the point.
Thank you.